Welcome to the big show.
He could go all the way. America, are you serious? It is showtime, baby. Here we go. Grand Jam Slam. It's Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Get ready to rumble!
Pump up the shit, yo, pump it up, yo, pump it. Y'all ready for this?
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. Move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. Give it up, go.
Welcome to the big show. Simply wait.
Action, we want action, ABC, iOS. Action, boys, action, boys. Pump up the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumping. And the jam is pumping. Look ahead, the crowd is jumping. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor. See, 'cause that's where the party's at, and you find out if you do that. I want a place to stay. Get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. I want a place to stay. Get your booty on the floor tonight. Make my day. Pump up the jam. Pump up the jam. Pump up the jam. Pump up the jam. Jam. Pump it up, up.
Finds it to 25, breaks a couple of tackles. Headlock, go. He could go all the
And welcome to Cold War Radio, ladies and gentlemen, live from our home base, WAAR. We are America Radio, your number one source for government and political talk anywhere, coming to you from the God's Country studio, nestled on the bank of the mighty Allegheny River. I am standing guard. And from Ice Station North Studio, somewhere on the Norwegian Sea, let's welcome Radio Norway to the program. Come in, Norway.
Good evening, Mr. Hutchbelly Jr., and good evening to our lovely audience in Spreaker and on the other channels. We've got quite a show here, Hutch, so let's not waste too much time on small talk.
No, you're absolutely right. Please follow me on Spreaker, ladies and gentlemen. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. You know where you can catch the show everywhere. The email is hutch@steelcityresistance.com, and the Cold War Radio patron hotline, 412-567-1460. The chat room is up on Spreaker. Please visit the website, steelcityresistance.com. You can catch the show notes links there, become a Cold War Radio patron, and send an email to Hutch Bailey Jr., P.O. Box 96022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 15226. Cold War Radio. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a little bit of inside baseball. A lot of you already know all this if you listen to the Wayne Dupree show. Most of my audience does. Wayne and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this tonight because we do have a very important show. But Wayne and I, when we were at CPAC, Wayne was making some negotiations with America's Voice, and I have decided to join Mr. Dupree and go to that network, and we are going to ease in to 2 hours a night, Monday to Friday. And that's going to drastically curtail Cold War Radio. It's going to go down to one show a week. However, I'm leaving it open just in case. In this business, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of times, and I'm not saying that America's Voice is going to do this, but sometimes people misrepresent things. And so I'm going to make sure that I have something to fall back on if that doesn't happen. But if it does work out, we're going to be on Dish Network after Dennis, what's his name? Dennis Miller. So we'll have a lot more reach. And like I said, I'm going to start it on one day a week on the weekend. Initially Sunday, I might move that to Saturday. I'm not sure yet. But Norway and Jack have both said that they will come on the show on that day. And Stacy didn't really answer. But anyway, so there it is. I've loved what I've been doing. I really wish I could do it all, and maybe at some point in time I will. But right now in my life, 2 hours a night, 5 days a week, maybe 6, plus Cold War Radio is just all I can do. So I would not blame you at all to adjust your patronage. That's fine. I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine too, because that's all I got right now until we get this going. But there it is, Norway, and I appreciate you being so good about it, and you guys have been great.
Yeah, and a big congratulations, Hutch. I mean, this is, if this works out, like you say, I understand you need to iron out some kinks first, but if this works out, it's a fantastic opportunity. And I mean, we got to take that into account. I see the chat room lit up with comments like bummer, oh dear. So we have a very loyal listener base, but I think it is also important to see things in a bigger perspective, and in the bigger perspective, reach also has something to say in this, and it's important that good voices like yourself and good minds like yourself get out to a wide audience, and because you have a message, you have an extremely important message. So I cross my fingers and I pray that you will succeed in this endeavor, Hutch.
Well, I thank you, and just for the record, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you have some plans for the future that I'd like to help you with also. Did you want to say anything about that or not?
Yeah, well,
because I could change the subject real quick.
Yeah, but no problem. I have on the drawing board trying to draw up a marketing plan and a strategy for my own radio show. So who knows? Maybe I'll pop in on the famous 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. Slot that we have used, and but you know, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I want to make a show that reports about Norway and Scandinavia and Europe to the American audience, to works like a conservative warning about what not to do to end up like countries like France, Britain, Germany, etc. So that is in the works. But, you know, it takes quite a lot of planning, and I need to build an American infrastructure, so to speak, so people can reach me by mail, by phone, etc. So it's in the works, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Then we wish you all the luck as well. And I'll tell you, our media doesn't do a very good job reporting on anything in Europe, really. So that'll be a welcome addition to the knowledge base of your listeners for sure. All right, let's get into it. Morning Joe, going crazy like everybody else on the circuit these days. This Joe Scarborough, I mean, now I don't know how you can be in the know and be in media, and you have to really be biased. You have to really be, I don't know, an idol worshiper to think that there wasn't an FBI source inside the Trump campaign after everything that's come out so far. But I want you to listen to Morning Joe because he doesn't get it.
Planted spies is absolutely ludicrous.
Well, as is the fact, Willie, that there was some conspiracy by Justice and the FBI and the Obama administration to rig the election. If that were the case, then they were all characters out of Mike Judge's Idiocracy and probably watered their grass with Gatorade because, after all, the investigation into Donald Trump's possible contacts with Russia was kept quiet while Hillary Clinton got a letter from the FBI 10 days beforehand that was absolutely devastating to her campaign. Everything the FBI did in the home stretch was to Donald Trump's benefit and Hillary Clinton's detriment, including McCabe's leak. Now, for somebody not to understand that, I mean, seriously, it suggests only one thing, and that is they are either intentionally lying or they are too stupid to handle household appliances.
Well,
I'll leave it to you, Willie, to decide which it is.
I can't believe it's the appliance part. Toasters aren't that hard, so it has to be the willful thing. I mean, these are the same people who celebrated James Comey coming out with that letter. Remember, James Comey was the boogeyman for the Clinton campaign, and the reason a lot of people around her and supporters of her think she lost, and now that narrative has been flipped on a total 180 by the Trump White House. There's another...
No, I'm not going to stand up for James Comey at all. But that being said, all he did was come out and reported that they had just gotten Huma Abedin's laptop, or Weiner's laptop, whoever's it was. And they found so many more emails they had to continue. So I don't know what they're talking about there.
Do we ever? But I mean, the way I interpret this, because I mean, you need a crystal ball and the tarot cards to to interpret Morning Joe sometimes. But I mean, it's fantastic that he's saying you're too stupid to handle household appliances. If you think the FBI was against Trump,
this is where we are. I mean, we're to this point where people are just starting to talk nuts. I don't see how they can stay on their message. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch the moment where they can't do it anymore.
Absolutely,
and that's coming.
Wonder why? And you wonder why the ratings are tanking.
Right? Yeah, their business. They're not doing their businesses any service. Just like the NFL. You know, the NFL owners came out and made a rule to require players to, if they come out on the field, to stand for the national anthem. And I'm going to add my own interpretation of the second part. Or if they hate their country that much, they can stay in the locker room. And the sports pundits and a lot of athletes and a lot of leftists are saying that it's unbelievable that they would do something like this. And they're going to destroy their business. Their brand is going to get crushed, and it won't happen in 1 year or 2 years. They lost 9% last year, and that'll keep happening because people won't put up with this for very long.
Absolutely. I mean, I think even on into the left side of American politics and voters that traditionally vote Democrat, I think that a lot of them have a really bad taste in the mouth when they see how the NFL has been playing along with these players that don't want to stand for the national anthem of the United States. So I agree with you. Unfortunately, we don't have American football on Norwegian TV, which is something I really, really miss. But we're getting a new internet now, so maybe we'll get some of the of the American games. But if I was in America, I watched the NFL, I would promptly just cut it out.
Yeah, that's what I did.
It's that simple.
Yeah, I did that. I mean, what else are you going to do? Now,
Exactly.
James Clapper was on a couple different shows, and he's really, this guy's losing it. Clapper is losing it. He's going on both sides of these issues. As a matter of fact, yesterday, he said that not only did the Russians interfere in the elections, the Russians were responsible for it turning out the way it did. The Director of National Intelligence said that. But let's listen to what else he said.
Having some understanding of the massive effort, the multidimensional effort, aggressive effort, unprecedented, that the Russians embarked on in the run-up to our election. To me, and when you consider that the election was settled on, less than 80,000 votes in 3 key states, and when you look at the volume and the sophistication of the messages and the messaging that the Russians did, to me it stretches logic and credulity to think that all that they did had no impact. I would argue that it had profound impact and probably turned the election.
Now, when he testified, when he was working for the federal government, he said there was no way that it affected the outcome of the election. But now that he's working for CNN, that's what he says. I mean, how can you expect anybody to believe anything you say going forward?
Oh, I mean, the guy is world famous for lying to Congress, and I mean, he's perfect for CNN. And seriously, if there was an American justice, he would have been clapped in iron a long time ago. But we might have to wait a while for that. But meanwhile, I think he fits perfectly into CNN, and he'll probably do the least amount of damage over there. So let him continue on his fantasy trip there.
The first time I ever saw James Clapper was when he was testifying to Congress after the Arab Spring started, and he testified that the Muslim Brotherhood was mostly a secular organization that eschewed violence. Testified to Congress to that effect. That was my first introduction to him when I knew he was a bad apple. Now, there's a new king of talk radio of the United States, Norway. Sean Hannity overtook Rush Limbaugh last week in ratings. Congratulations to Sean. I don't know how you did that, but congratulations.
Well, that's quite a feat. But, Sean Hannity, he has been true to President Trump and the movement that got President Trump elected, and to exposing all these lies we see in the intelligence community. And I think there is a hunger in American population to get the truth.
Oh, you're right.
And I think Sean Hannity does his very best to convey the truth as they uncover it to the American people.
And I think you're right. I think that's the reason, and I just thought of this just now, but I think that's the reason that it happened, because he has been relentless when it comes to the president, and I think a lot of people run from our shows right to Hannity, the TV show. But good for him. That's a good deal. And what I've said since the beginning of this, that I know that there's hardcore patriotic people in the FBI just like us. And, man, why aren't they coming out? I always thought that the salvation of this would be the special agents. And now there are agents that want to be subpoenaed by Congress so they can reveal the failures of Comey and McCabe. There's one guy that was even in the meetings that wants to come out. So this is going to be the point where if they can stay safe long enough, where I'm going to watch Morning Joe and see what he has to say about it.
There you go.
Now, with our elections, Norway, especially the close ones, it always comes down to who's counting the votes. And in the end, every state has a Secretary of State and a district attorney that has to certify elections and has to decide who gets prosecuted and things like that. And we've got a rat in the woodpile. George Soros has raised his ugly head again, and he's out spending money. Let's listen about George Soros.
With looming midterm elections, many Democrats see an opportunity to make a power grab and seize key areas out from under conservative leadership. In this special report, One America's very own Pearson Sharp explains how socialist billionaire George Soros is doing everything he can to make that a reality.
After devastating losses in the 2016 election, Democrats are looking for ways to reverse their defeat and gain back some control across the country. And they aren't picky about how they get that power back, so long as they push conservatives out. This means they're relying on alternative methods to snatch back power. Enter George Soros. There's no bigger Democratic megadonor than George Soros, the billionaire investor turned political maverick who's openly worked to influence elections in Democrats' favor for decades. Soros has admitted to orchestrating government coups in Croatia, Georgia, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Yugoslavia, all to match his progressive socialist agenda. He's famous for breaking the Bank of England, shorting the currency and causing a financial crisis, and earning himself over $1 billion. After destroying Thailand's currency, the Prime Minister called him an economic war criminal. But Soros doesn't seem to lose any sleep at night.
I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do.
So with all his international meddling, why not stir up unrest right here in the U.S.? Well, there's lots of evidence proving that's exactly what he's doing. He already funds numerous radical groups in America that promote violence, groups such as Antifa and Black Lives Matter, to which he donated over $33 million to help stir up protests in cities like Ferguson, Missouri. Soros also fights to support illegal immigration into the U.S. Along with trying to sway the Supreme Court to favor illegal immigration policies, he also launched a smartphone app called Notifica to help illegal aliens avoid federal authorities. It resembles his plan for Europe, where Soros has pushed for the EU to take in more than 1 million Muslim migrants every year, a plan that far outpaces Europe's own native birth rate, effectively replacing Europe's population with Muslim migrants. He's taking that plan to places like California, where the billionaire is making his influence felt up and down the state. One America News spoke with Summer Stephan, the current district attorney for San Diego. Summer is running in a race to hold on to her position as the county's top prosecutor against a Soros-backed candidate. She told us she's not actually running against her opponent, Genevieve Jones-Wright, a name no one had heard until she recently started getting funding from the leftist billionaire from out of state. Instead, Summer says she's actually running against George Soros.
It's very hard to really distinguish between George Soros and my opponent. The platform is identical, and it seems to be really a copy of what George Soros is pushing nationwide. And that's what we're facing here in San Diego. This is not really a San Diego election. It's an outsider election, kind of disguised as a local election.
Soros is targeting local elections, particularly for district attorneys, where he's working to insert candidates who conform to his ambitions. Spending millions on local DA campaigns, Soros is working to advance one of the main goals of the progressive left, overhauling the entire justice system in America. So far, he's put more money into DA races than the total spent on the 2016 presidential campaign by even the biggest super donors. That includes key states like in California.
Jeez, oh man, I'll tell you, California, I think California is the United Nations. You can never hear anybody from California that doesn't have some kind of accent like that DA did. But, I watched a documentary, Norway, just the other day, about the Munich Olympics and the Palestinians that killed the Israeli athletes, and how Golda Meir and the Mossad went down and systematically killed each one of the terrorists except for one. They left one stay alive. And I'm trying to figure out, how is George Soros still alive after he did all that? I really can't. I can't believe that. I can't believe.
No. You're right.
I mean, you ruin a country's currency, and you just come out the next day in a 60 Minutes interview? It blows my mind. It boggles my mind.
Yeah. It's. I mean, he's a Nazi war criminal and communist instigator, and it's sometimes it seems like he's untouchable. And when a guy like that is buying up district attorney elections to get the dream the Nazis couldn't give him, namely dictatorship, it beggars belief that nobody reacts.
And the guy's Jewish.
Yeah, well, at least he was Jewish up until the Second World War, where he started to impound Jewish valuables and property that was taken from the Jews sent to the gas chambers. So I don't know what he is today. He doesn't seem very Jewish to me. He doesn't seem like anything but the Satan incarnate, if I may be so bold, for the communists. And I mean, his communist ideals and the way he acts, that is communism.
He even looks the part.
He has no shred of decency at all.
No, and he even looks the part. I mean, all right, we're going to get into something very serious right now. And I've thought about this a lot. And with current events going on and my years-long reporting, 8 years, or whenever it started, of the Secaucus Islands and the South China Sea and China's domination of that. And I think our first report was on Chinese infiltration of the United States grocery supply line. David Archibald brings a report that scared the hell out of me and makes perfect sense. It's entitled T-2 years for a war with China. And if you know anything about our military history, you know that we have been ready for about 0 wars that we've gotten into. The first opening stages of every war that we've ever been in have been disastrous for the United States. First of all, how do we know that the war with China is definitely on the agenda? We tend to rationalize other countries' behavior because it's hard to accept in this day and age that a country would go to war just for the sake of it. Thus, there is a theory that China is just testing the limits of what it can get away with in the South China Sea, the Secaucus, etc., like a 2-year-old testing the limits of tolerated behavior, but will stop short of war. It was the same situation prior to World War II. There were some individuals who saw what was coming and prepared accordingly. A few years ago, I was at a reception in Washington at which the guest of honor was General Edward Rowney, then aged 96. As a teenager, Edward Rowney attended the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. He saw that Germany was preparing for war, so he came back to enroll in West Point. At about the same time, a British Air Force officer inspected a German airfield for fighter aircraft. When he saw that the airfield was set up with refueling points around the apron to minimize turnaround time between sorties, he realized that the Germans were intending to fight a war, not just enforce a peace. Churchill was both hero and villain in this period, in that while he was a lone voice in the House of Commons warning of the coming conflict, he was also the original author in 1919 of the 10-year rule, under which the UK declared that, as it was not expecting a war within the following 10 years, it could run down its armed forces. The effects of that policy were still being felt when the war started in 1939. The modern parallel is Obama's shrinking of the defense budget from 2010. Hitler made it easy in that he laid out what he was going to do in the book he wrote in prison. China has been no less transparent. In an internal Chinese Communist Party propaganda film entitled Silent Contest, the narration states the process of China's achieving a national renaissance will definitely involve engagement and fight against the U.S. hegemonic system. This is the contest of the century, regardless of people's wishes. Chinese naval officers can't stand to be in the same room as Japanese naval officers. The hate they have drilled into them overcomes any basic civility they may have. Now, you know, I've reported on the hate between China and Japan, and I don't know that it's what they're talking about here. I would guess it would be because of the rape of Nanking, etc., that happened before World War II.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the treatment or the tensions between Chinese and Japanese naval officers, I guess the Chinese, well, historically, has a good reason for that, but you know, it's like blaming white Americans today for slavery. Because Japan has moved on since then and has gone through quite a big transformation to the country we see today. So this is Chinese communism at its best. But you know, the premise of this article, yes, it's true that, and I think this is the genius of Trump with his peace through strength policy. Building up a strong military is the best guarantor against war. I think there is a good chance that there will come an armed conflict with China if the American military isn't built up and Americans get smarter in how the intelligence community is run, because the intelligence community today needs a real thorough house cleaning. But you know, to say that it will come in 2 years, I don't think so. I find it's not that war can't come, because it can. I mean, China has an insatiable need for more resources to fuel their communist/capitalist economy. So they need to expand, and they're expanding wildly in Africa. But you know, sooner or later you will reach a point where they will need to take resources from democratic countries, allies with the United States, or even from the United States. And that's where we'll see the real clash. Whether it will be a conventional skirmish or it will be a full-blown nuclear war, it's impossible to say.
Well, and incidentally, I'm just reminded of something. If you go to the show notes links, the links don't work. All right, I was using different software. You have to copy the link and paste it into your browser because there's some information on this story. If you want to read the heartbeat of that hate, the Japanese Foreign Ministry provides a monthly update of Chinese incursions into Japanese waters around the Senkaku Islands. And that explains that the red vertical bars are the steady drumbeat of the war to come. The fishing vessels involved are paid by the Chinese government to do this. The incursion started with Xi Jinping's ascendancy to chairman of the Central Military Commission in 2012 when we first started reporting it to you, before he became president in 2013. Until those bars go to zero, war is coming to East Asia. So that just leaves the question of the timing that we were speaking about. To that end, Captain Farnell's May 17th testimony to the House Intelligence Committee is enlightening. Captain Farnell reminds us that President Xi instructed the People's Liberation Army to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2020, and that's where I submit it will start. That is a scant 2 years away now, but is looking like the date for a couple reasons. Firstly, China's economic and strategic environment is deteriorating. Manufacturing growth has flatlined. Don't be concerned about headline growth, because a lot of that is borrowing money to build things that don't provide an economic rate of return. When China's borrowing ability is tapped out or the bad debt pile gets too deep, that growth will disappear. China's coal production, the energy equivalent of 50 million barrels per day of oil, is projected to peak in 2020 and then go into long-term decline. China's oil production peaked in 2015 and has tipped over into long-term decline at 200,000 barrels per day a year. This is a 5.5% per annum decline rate on the current production level. And there's a lot more to this, ladies and gentlemen, but to Norway's point, when we say strengthen the military, it's got to be in ways we haven't done for a while. We got to build some aircraft carriers and some destroyers and whatever else a modern Navy, a modern blue water Navy needs, because the Navy will have a big deal in something that goes on like this.
Yeah, and I think actually Trump's overture for a space force is actually quite intelligent, because I think in the years to come we'll see aircraft carriers take a backseat role in the military, because now you have cruise missiles that are so fast and low going. You can fly Mach 2 or maybe even Mach 3 at sea level, and they can sneak up on you everywhere from a submarine, practically everywhere, and reach the entire globe like the old ICBMs did. So you need a smart man at the helm like Trump that is thinking outside the box, and I think he's actually doing the right thing, laying the groundwork for a space force.
I do too, but in the immediate right now, I hope we get the shipyards busy and at least be prepared. Now, we have some problems. You and I, incidentally, picked the same story from Front Page Magazine that lit both of us up, so I'm going to let you lead in to Dangerous Times for the Constitution and Freedom, a serious story.
Yes, this is a brilliant story written by Bruce Thornton from in Front Page Magazine, and guys, if you haven't watched Front Page Magazine, please check it out. They got a ton of brilliant articles, but this article is it's a bullseye. It's absolutely he frames it perfectly, and he writes that while we the people distract ourselves with porn stars and royal weddings, the cracks in our constitutional order continue to multiply and widen. Evidence continues to mount that the sitting President Barack Obama colluded in using the nation's security and surveillance apparatus to subvert the campaign and then presidency of a legitimately elected candidate and president. This effort consisted of numerous illegalities: a mole planted in Donald Trump's campaign, a FISA warrant granted on the basis of false opposition research paid for by his rival, the outgoing president's expansion of the number of people allowed to unmask the identity of Americans mentioned in passing during surveillance, a rogue FBI director, James Comey, who illegally usurped prosecutorial powers to exonerate a felonious Hillary Clinton, and other FBI agents colluding in the plot to damage Trump. And don't forget, a deputy attorney general appointing the close friend of the fired and disgraced Comey as a special counsel to investigate the non-crime of collusion, and is an investigation that has gone on for a year with nothing to show but a handful of indictments resulting from dubious perjury traps.
And you know what the thing that that is most stunning about all this is 30 years ago, if this would have happened, the Democrats would have jumped up and purged these people out of their party. But now, our people, it has to be the schools and the media, but our people are defending this. Half of them. I mean, you know, the Democrats. It's the whole Congress. There's not an honorable Democrat in the whole legislative branch.
Yeah, well, I think this is down to propaganda, and this is down to the fact that the so-called Democratic Party of today is the Communist Party of USA.
Yeah, I mean,
you have people running for the Democratic Party today that blatantly admits, yeah, we're communists. So what? It's cool.
It's a dangerous place to be, and I mean, we're witnessing the deep state Democrats undermining of a divided government, checks and balances, and government accountability. It was started over a century ago, addled by the false knowledge of scientism and secularism in the 19th century. The progressives, whenever you hear the word progressives, that word is interchangeable with communists. Literally. I mean,
absolutely.
The word communist went out of style in the 1910s, and they changed it to progressive. And you have people now saying that they're progressive, in the Woodrow Wilson fashion, as Hillary Clinton said. So it's something where at the very least, we have to make sure that we are educated on where we come from and why, for a couple 300 years, our country rocketed to the top of the human race in every way. There's one reason for that, and it's because of the way we were founded. Unfortunately, when you have unbridled liberty like that, and you have an adversary that realizes that all I got to do to fix this is take God out and take the family out, and it'll be gravy after that. And we're almost there.
Yeah, and there is this thing about power. It tends to corrupt, and that is a trait we find in some human beings. They seek power, and when they get power, they tend to be corrupted. And this is something the founding fathers were very aware of, and which they built into the American Constitution, so that the new nation of America would be safe in the future. So rule number one for these progressives, as they call them, it's a nice word, but it's another word for communists. These progressives, they want to tear down the Constitution of the United States, to play down the significance of those timeless words. And I mean, if you let that happen, you have fulfilled the worst fear of the founding fathers, namely, you have put tyrants in the place of the people's government.
Now, somebody that we've been hearing from a lot lately, John Brennan, Diana West at dianawest.com says, let's take another look at Brennan's red thread. As the fragments come together in a fantastic mosaic indicating that the seniors of the intelligence community, led or organized by CIA Director John Brennan, set out to create the appearance of so-called Russian collusion around what amount to political bystanders in order to catalyze their conspiracy against candidate then President Trump. I am put in mind of the investigatory motions I imagine having set the groundwork for Stalin's purges. This occurred to me again while reading George Neumeyer's latest in the American Spectator. Neumeyer zeroes in on the work of David Korn and Michael Isikoff, where they inadvertently provide a picture of Brennan running an anti-Trump spying operation right out of Langley. Langley? Are we sure this wasn't Lubyanka? This interagency working group at CIA headquarters, Korn and Isikoff explained, would review the intelligence and figure out the full scope and nature of the Russian operation. You think there's going to be bodies falling about this Norway? I mean, this is these guys are in charge of organizations that pile up bodies. I mean, I heard Clapper say yesterday, whatever day he was on The View, that he didn't like to use the word spy. Man, you were the director of national intelligence. You were in charge of all the spies.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I mean, James Clapper, John Brennan, all these guys, they are actually laying the groundwork for a purge.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is why. What's his name? The guy that blew the whistle. He took a whole lot of evidence they gave to British newspaper, The Guardian, or whatever it was. He's living in Russia now. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, Snowden.
Edward Snowden. There you go. And you know, regardless of who publicized this, the way he did it was clearly not a betrayal. And I think that his warning is something we should heed, because he said that the American people is being systematically surveilled and spied on by the intelligence community. And that is a big red flag, and he documented it by the documents he presented to the journalists. And Edward Snowden, he was pegged down as a libertarian, and I think he still is. And on that basis, he felt that he had to speak up, and he paid the price for it.
He did. Oh, we got a caller.
We
got a caller. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's happening, Hutch? It's me.
Chris James, my man. What's happening?
Oh, not too much. I was excited to catch you off of that scumbag Wayne show so we could finally talk.
All right, Chris. Thanks for calling. We appreciate it. Damn, he found my show now. Anyway, I should have known when it said unknown caller. But anyway, speaking of the China situation, a U.S. staffer suffers brain injury after sound incident in China. And U.S. and Chinese authorities are investigating the matter, an embassy spokeswoman said. And this is after a U.S. government employee experienced an abnormal sound and suffered a mild brain injury in an incident reminiscent of mysterious illness that hit diplomats in Cuba. So first they shoot laser beams at our fighter pilots, and now they're using sonic devices on our diplomatic corps. So anyway, I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but we're going to have to pay attention to it. It's something that we can't, like the previous article said about worrying about porn stars and royal weddings. North Korea is a pimple on the back of a dog's butt compared to China. You know, we need to pay attention.
And actually, that dog is China. So absolutely, and I mean, this is there were speculations that these were psychosomatic, a mass psychosomatic episode. You know, this is too pervasive to be anything but an attack, and we can only speculate what kind of a weapon this is. I would personally, I would go for not a sonic weapon, but a microwave weapon. But when you have people that say they hear noises, that doesn't necessarily mean there is a noise. That can be a cause, an effect of the mild traumatic brain injury they've suffered. So we can only speculate. But now that the American government and also the Canadian government, which has been subjected to the same are aware of this, it's possible to set up detection equipment to pick up what kind of an energy they're using to cause this.
As long as they pay attention that they're doing it, that's the thing that gets me. It's like, admit that they're doing it and act accordingly. Norway, we are out of time tonight. Final comments, and how can people get in touch with you?
I quickly would add to the story from Diana West. She is the renowned author of Death of the Grown-Up and American Betrayal. And I've just bought American Betrayal. You've got to read that book, Hutch. It's wow, it's a page turner. I mean, her writing is like music. So I look forward to the weekend where I can really gorge myself on that fantastic book, American Betrayal. I am at Norway for Trump on Twitter, Gab. I also have a Facebook page, and also norwayfortrump.com. And that's Norway 4 with the number 4.
And what's playing in the background, sir?
We are listening to Sønner av Norge, or as you would say in English, Sons of Norway, and very beautiful and patriotic Norwegian hymn.
Well, thank you, sir, for coming on tonight in place of Stacy. She's busy. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, Berg's Eye View on Twitter, heading over to the Wayne Dupree Show next. Thanks to everybody who listened live. Thanks, Chris James, for calling up. And thanks for letting us into your life for 1 hour. God bless Norway. God bless, ladies and gentlemen.
God bless Hutch.